I'm Joan Truckenbrod, and I'd like to thank ICEA for inviting all of us to this very intriguing and exciting and interesting program. I'm a digital artist. I've been working since the mid-70s. Let's see if I can... Oh. Okay. And I'm always interested in working between the digital realm, the virtual realm, and the physical realm, injecting a materiality into the work. These are early 1970, I'm going to contextualize a little bit. These are early plotter drawings programmed in FORTRAN programming language, and these were on exhibit at the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York in the exhibition curated by Christiane Paul. This textile is also in the collection, the digital collection at the Whitney, and she curated the exhibition titled Programmed Rules, Codes, and Choreographies in Art, 1965 to 2018. So this is also a programmed textile translated to fiber from the computer through a number of steps, which I'm happy to talk with anyone about. This was the first one of those that I created. Again, programming. And this one is currently in the exhibition at LACMA, the LA the LA County Museum of Art, curated by Leslie Jones. And that will be there until July 2nd. This one is called Electronic Patchwork. It's 60 inches wide and 84 inches high, and actually 152 centimeters wide by 213 centimeters high. And I used heat transfer color xerography, hand ironed onto polyester. The images were programmed as an animation, and I captured one frame at a time and then transferred them to fabric. So I am now working with a digital loom. It seemed like a natural transition. This is the first in the Mycelium series, and it's based on lichens. This is a detail. I'm weaving with silk and stainless steel. This is a full view, and it is 38 inches wide by 55 inches high, or 139 centimeters high by 96 centimeters high. So this really imagines the resonant configuration of tangled fibers, invisible, yet they create sound underground in the mycelium. And so I'm using, in this series, let me tell you first. In this series, I'm using diagrams as well. But for some of the fibers, I'm using 4 colors, and one of the fibers is colored with a dye created by fungi in a lab. So this is how they create the dye that I'm using in Petri dishes. And you can see the dye just kind of emerges out of the pieces of fungi. I'm working with Sari Robinson in her lab at Oregon State University. And I wanted to show this because the fungi, this is where they make the dye, really, in a natural environment. It's called spalting, and you can see that the blue is created by the fungi. And actually, the fungi are doing this because they're creating boundaries or borders between their territorial zones. So Sari Robinson has been able to capture this in her lab so that we could use it to color fiber. And the interesting thing about this is it's totally sustainable. It does not require water or any kind of chemicals like mordants to prepare the fabric. So there's no water required. So it's a model for textile designers and fashion designers in the design industries to adopt this kind of dye, because it's totally sustainable. This is the first in the Mycelium series. It is 54 inches wide, 42 inches high, and a few things. I'm interested in disrupting the surface of textile because it has such a linear quality, and a lot of my work has been sort of experimental in the process of disrupting the process. So what looks to be the white horizontal pieces are actually a polyurethane that is hand dyed with the fungi dye, and I actually have to paint it onto the surface of this. The other fibers are silk and stainless steel. And then the way I work is I experiment. When you're working with the loom, it's an interesting process of digital and analog programming from my point of view. So I'm working in conjunction with the loom. However, I never see this final image on the screen. It's sort of like working early on with the plotter drawings, where you didn't see them on the screen. You imagined them, and as they then emerged either by the drawing, or in this case, they're emerging on my loom, which is 55 inches wide. So I'm trying different color sets before I finally begin to emerge the colors that I like. So across the bottom, you're seeing my black warp, and then you're seeing different color tests before I really get into this. And the diagrams here, the sort of sparks or spokes, indicate the networks of the mycelium. And evidently there's also been research, and here's a close-up. So you can actually see how the polyurethane fiber disrupts the surface, and you can see in more detail the sparks that are occurring. And there has been research in terms of the sound that's evidently emerging from the mycelium. People have put electrical conductors in the soil, and they are able to capture the electrical signals that are going in between. So this particular one, which is the second one, has the same kinds of diagrams, and also across the top there's sort of an indication of the sound sequence in this one. And this is also a detail. I also like working with a more metallic thread. So this has a metallic thread. There's 4 color threads, and the way the loom works, it's basically, it's a thread controller. So for each line in this weaving, I am throwing the shuttles 4 times across the loom, and then 4 times coming back. And for each intersection of the warp and the weft, the loom picks up the appropriate heddle to create that color at that intersection, sort of like a pixel. I only have 880 heddles across the loom, so in a way it's very low resolution, which is interesting to me in terms of the interpretation of ideas. And in this one, I tend to work in an experimental mode. About a quarter of the way down, you'll see a darker line. I have woven in fiber optics, but it's difficult to record the light that's coming out through the end of those. So this is the one I'm currently working on, and you'll see it in total. This is taken off the loom, so you can see the warp coming through, and on the top is my beater bar, and then you can also see a little bit of the wires that pick up the threads. And so at the bottom, you'll see, again, the thick and thin of the threads that I'm coloring. I started with a pink and then also a blue, and because I'm not in a lab where my loom is, the use of the coloration from the fungi is diluted a bit so that the colors are somewhat subtle compared to what they would be in a scientific lab with a hood to take away any fumes. And then, so this was a light blue, and I decided that in contrast with using the thread from the mycelium, I would translate back into just using a light blue thread. So you can see how the articulation of the image totally changes as I change this. I'm changing one of the 4 threads is all. And I'm maintaining the same color, but I'm just not using the thick and thin. So here's that total weaving. And this one it's 55 inches wide. How high is this? But it's 42 inches high. Thank you. So then, and here is the detail. And in the weaving process also, this thick and thin thread tends to turn and twist, which is also interesting, I think. I'm also interested in translating these ideas into sculptural forms. So again, a detail of the same one. So I've begun to work with 3D printing. I'm working at the University of Oregon in the art research lab run by Colin Ives. And we're doing 3D visual scanning that then gets translated into 3D prints. So this is about 12 inches high. I made this house form out of cut up a weaving and made this form, leaving the edges unraveling. And so then we also 3D scanned a coil of dried seaweed and some dried leaves, and digitally we then, working on the computer screen, we combined these three elements, the house and the dried seaweed and the dried leaves. This is it's just sitting in the 3D printer. This is nylon powder. And you can now look inside of this so you can see what's happening with the natural forms in conjunction with the house form. And I also made a little vellum house. These scans the prints are about 7 inches high, 7-inch cube. So you can see the juxtaposition of the structured form with the more organic form. And this is another one of the same. Now I'm also interested, this is printed with resin, and the others were nylon powder. Because of the characteristic of these prints, I'm trying to envision how I can more engage and integrate the structure of my weavings with the 3D printing. So that's my current trajectory. I should say the people that helped me in this lab are Eowyn Businger and Gordy Helmick. They both work in the Knight Science Center at the University of Oregon. So my next step here will be to find a 3D printing where I can work with porcelain and ceramic so that I can inject a fragility that is sort of in the textile, but also into the sculptural form. So thank you very much.